The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
Silk City Hot Sauce. A small batch hot sauce prepared with farm-grown peppers. Rich and vibrant taste, no artificial ingredients, 100% pure goodness. 8 flavors from mild to wild. The sweet and spicy Mango Madness, the green jalapeno sauce called Aztec Attack. The Dragon features fire-roasted peppers and pure Vermont maple syrup. Killer hot sauces for the true hot sauce fanatic. A blend of ghost peppers, habanero peppers, honey, and garlic, and more. You gotta see the bottles, too. Each flavor has original comic book artwork. You gotta see them. Go to SilkCityHotSauce.com. SilkCityHotSauce.com. Enter promo code ED, ED, to save 15%, and you'll also receive a free bottle of hot sauce. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator, Ed Opperman. You can find me at Patreon, at the Opperman Report Patreon, where we add all kinds of new content. So if you like today's show, you can hear us there Monday to Friday. We put up new content and 8 hours of new exclusive content each month. But the shows you hear on AM/FM radio 5 nights a week, we play over there with the ads removed. You can listen to them ad-free. I know a lot of people hate the ads. But also, too, you can check out our Spreaker, where we have all of our archives. And I believe we did at least one show, possibly two, with our guest today, Tony Ortega, who's an expert on Scientology. Okay, I think he's the renowned expert, one of the first ones to really take on Scientology. You can find him at TonyOrtega.org, which is devoted to his battle against Scientology. But his Twitter handle also too is Tony Ortega 94. Mr. Ortega, are you there?
Ed, thanks for having me back on.
Well, last one I loved, man. That was one of my favorite interviews. How many times we had John? Once or twice?
Well, I can't. I think once. I'm not sure, maybe twice, but I know once at least.
Yeah, I know, and it was so thorough. It was so thorough. We got so much information out of you. But remind the audience, who is Tony Ortega?
I'm just a journalist. I'm not fighting Scientology. I'm just covering its controversies, and I've been doing that for 25 years now, believe it or not. And for the last 9 years, I've been writing at my own website, TonyOrtega.org, where we have a new story, news about Scientology every morning at 7 a.m. Eastern. I also have a couple of books out about Scientology that you can also see at my website.
Well, real quick, what's the name of the books?
Well, I came out with a book called The Unbreakable Miss Lovely. One of my favorite stories about Scientology is about a woman named Paulette Cooper who dared to write about Scientology very early on. She put out a book in 1971 called The Scandal of Scientology, and Scientology literally tried to destroy her. And they spent 16 years trying to either get her thrown in prison or get her to commit suicide. And I think a lot of people were basically familiar with the idea that she had suffered more harassment than anybody. But I really dug into her story for the first time, learned a lot of things that had never been found out, got a lot of documents, and told her whole full story as a narrative about what was going on at Scientology and really how they have never changed, Ed. They're still doing the same kinds of spying operations and harassment operations today that they were doing about Paulette 40 years ago. So that's what that book is about. Is it shows that whole history of Scientology spying on people.
Were her family or loved ones ever able to achieve justice in the courts against Scientology?
Well, she managed to end things with a settlement in 1985, but I showed that they're still keeping an eye on her today, or at least a few years ago. But she managed to get herself out of all that. But this you have to understand, this woman, she's really special. She is so determined. Even today, she's doing what she can to try to expose what Scientology does. But as far as, she always talks about how they have never apologized for what they put her through all those years ago.
Now you say they're still at it. She had litigation with them. She can't get a restraining order?
Well, like I said, she did achieve a settlement with them in 1985, right. And so they basically have this sort of situation now where they're supposed to leave each other alone. But yeah. I showed that they're still keeping tabs on her at least.
I tell you, I've heard of the history of Scientology and their use of private investigators, but I thought it kind of calmed down, because living in Vegas, I just moved from Vegas, and they used to have that Scientology center over there on Sahara, and then there was no activity there for years and years, and one day you saw the building up for sale. So I kind of thought that they were dying down, but their focus is still on enemies.
Yeah, and that's because one of the most important things to know about Scientology is that it's all based on the writings of this science fiction writer, L. Ron Hubbard, who died in 1986 and left behind millions and millions of words of policies for them to follow. And they consider him, everything he wrote, to be scripture. And so they can't change it. He died. And so they're still following the playbook he laid out between about 1955 and 1967. He wrote a bunch of policies about how to deal with enemies. And it's a playbook for how to mess with people and try to destroy their lives. And they follow it to the letter today because they just believe that they can't do anything that he hasn't spelled out.
Why don't you tell us a little bit, the average person who's just walking by is not familiar with the subject. What's the big deal? So what if they follow L. Ron Hubbard and they think he's a god in his scripture? What's his background?
Right. He was a very successful science fiction, a pulp writer in the 30s and 40s. And in 1950, he came out with this book called Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, and claimed to be the first person in 50,000 years to understand how the human mind actually works. And initially what Dianetics was about was you were supposed to use his counseling to recover memories of what it had been like to be a fetus in the womb. This became very popular briefly in the 50s. People were forming clubs to try to figure out what it was like to have been born. And there's no science. Basically, he said that the traumas you experience as a fetus in the womb get re-stimulated as an adult and cause all of your problems today. And there's no science to it, but people liked it. And then that was a huge fad for about a year, and then it died away. And then he came up with a new version of it called Scientology, where you're not just going back to the womb to recover memories, you're going back to previous lives, centuries ago, millions of years ago, trillions of years ago. This is what Scientology is the idea that you're this godlike, immortal being called a thetan, that you have simply lost, you've forgotten your godlike abilities. And if you go through Scientology counseling and recover those memories from eons ago, you'll regain those godlike powers. And I mean, he literally said, I have a lecture where he said that once you regain these powers through his counseling, you'll be able to crush a planet between thumb and forefinger. So these are people seeking godhood, okay, if they can just remember who they were billions of years ago. That's the essence of Scientology. And he knew that it would look weird to the outsiders. So over the years, like I said, between 1955 and 1965, he really built up this whole system of obedience and secrecy that he gave the Orwellian name ethics. And they enforce that stuff to the letter today. That's why these celebrities like Tom Cruise and John Travolta, they will never tell you that they're doing past life therapy to recover their godlike powers. They have been trained that to the public, all they should ever say is, it's helped me in my life. If you're curious about it, you should read it, get a book. That you can go back to all the interviews they've done over the last 20 years. It all follows that pattern. They know that Scientology is very strange, and they're not supposed to talk about it publicly. So the secrecy, the paranoia, they literally have a secret police department. All of that is to keep the weird stuff under wraps and punish anybody that tries to expose it.
Well, if Cruise and Travolta have been practicing this for, they're my age, okay, everyone the same age as that, for a long time, how come they haven't achieved this yet? How come they're not out? Travolta's still flying a plane. He's not flying on his own, right? How come?
Right.
How come?
Well, that's an excellent question, and the way they deal with that. One of the things Hubbard did that was so clever was he made it so not only are you not supposed to talk to the public about this pursuit of godlike powers, you're not even supposed to talk to your fellow Scientologist about it. That's against the rules. So, yeah, you would think after time they would compare notes and say, hey, you've been doing this for 20 years. Can you fly yet?
Yeah.
You know, you've been doing this for 30 years. Can you read people's minds yet? But they're not allowed to do that. So the Scientologist who realizes that they've spent a couple of $1 million and 30 years of their life and they can't do any of these things, they just assume it's because they haven't done it right, and that everybody else can leave their bodies and read minds and are impervious to disease. They always assume that if there's a problem, it's not with Hubbard's technology, it's because they haven't applied it correctly. And so that's another way they enforce it, is you can never express a doubt that this stuff isn't actually coming true.
You're on the inside there, you're ear to the ground. What is their explanation for the tragedy with John Travolta's son?
Well, this is the other thing that he built, that Hubbard built into as sort of a fail-safe proposition in Scientology. Anything bad that happens to you is your own fault.
Oh.
And it's called there's a phrase and I forget it's anyway, but the point is, anybody that has anything bad happen to them, including disease, it's because they haven't trusted the technology enough and they've brought it upon themselves. So I mean, they also, you have to understand, Scientology hates psychiatry and the mental health profession with every fiber of its being. That comes from Hubbard. And so I do believe that John Travolta and Kelly Preston did get some proper care for Jet, and they knew he was autistic. But in Scientology, you're not supposed to talk about that because that's a psychiatric diagnosis. So it would have been tricky. And yeah, they would have assumed, the other Scientologists would have assumed that Jet just wasn't, that he had brought it upon himself.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine the guilt?
I know, it's
living
incredible.
with that. That's just heartbreaking because there's so much stress and trauma when you have a child with a problem. And just imagine and believing that it's your fault. Now, for the average person who would still say to you, "Hey, Tony Ortega, TonyOrtega.org." So what? Okay, they want to crush a planet with their fingers. Well, what's wrong with that? It's
right. And if it was just the beliefs, I'd agree with you. If it was just, I don't have a problem with somebody believing that they're part of this intergalactic network and they were running a prison planet 30 billion years ago. Have at it. That's great. In fact, I've written about the fact that I like the space opera. I think the space opera is the best part. But the problem is it's built around this organization that is very secretive, very controlling, completely totalitarian, and they don't let them talk about those things. They enforce these ideas that everything's your own fault. And also, here's another thing that's so strange about this organization, Ed. The idea is that you're this immortal Thetan, right? And you've lived for trillions of years. And right now, you happen to be in this one physical body called Ed Opperman. But actually, the Thetan that you are has nothing to do with that physical body. And once that body wears out and dies, you, the Ed Opperman Thetan, will go away for a while. They have various theories about what happens between lifetimes. But eventually you'll come back and you will jump into a newborn baby in a maternity ward somewhere and start a new life. So if that's the case, then, and you've jumped into a newborn baby, what is your connection to the mother and father of that child? There is none. It's a fiction. They really believe that the family unit is a fiction, and there is no real physical tie between father and son, mother and daughter, that you're all just individual Thetans. So that is how parents in Scientology are able to drop off their 8-year-olds at the Scientology Center and consign them to be indentured servants for the rest of their lives because they believe the family is fictional. So this is why families get ripped apart. And then if somebody in your family turns against Scientology, you have to turn your backs on them or you'll risk getting kicked out as well. So families are ripped apart, mothers and sons, fathers and daughters, brothers and sisters, and they also, in order to enforce this kind of totalitarian control, they harass people, they extort people. So most of what I'm covering is not the beliefs. Again, if they want to believe that they're part of some galactic federation, I don't care. You never see me complain about people that are into Jedi, the Jedi religion, right? Who cares? No, it's the fact that this totalitarian organization is ripping apart families and destroying lives, and year after the year, the U.S. government does nothing about it. That's what concerns me.
I know the last time you were on, we talked a lot about the slave labor and how they become indentured servitude, and they owe many lifetimes of millions of dollars to the church, have to work it off, sometimes in facilities that are locked. They're locked in as slaves. But if you're right, if you're talking about them dropping off their kids like this, I'm really not caring. Is there a pattern of sexual abuse of these kids?
Well, recently we're hearing more and more stories about the fact that, if these kids are being dropped off, they are then susceptible to being attacked by some Scientologists. And then one of the absolute high crimes in Scientology is to turn in your fellow Scientologists to the police or to sue them. So there's protection for people that are predators. If they, and I have written about several stories about, for example, at one point there was a daycare center where the son of the Scientologist son of the Scientologist woman that was running it was attacking the little girls. And the parents found out about it, and the Church of Scientology convinced them not to take it to the police. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing that goes on there, is that crimes are not, and there's the case that we're really watching today is with Danny Masterson, the actor who was on that 70s show, who I first broke the story almost 4 years ago now, that the LAPD was investigating him on multiple rapes. And last year he was charged. He's facing 45 years to life in prison for raping 3 different women who were all Scientologists at the time. And the reason it's taken so long to get to court, because these rapes allegedly happened between 2001 and 2003, the reason why it's taken so long to get to court, all 3 of these women will say the Church of Scientology tried to convince them not to go to the police, because that's not what you do in Scientology. So I don't know that there's quite the problem in Scientology there is with, say, the Catholic Church, but there's no question that when you make children a vulnerable indentured servant of this organization, it makes them more of a target for predators, and there's definitely evidence that that happens.
Yeah, and once these predators become aware that there's an opportunity there, they gravitate toward that. There's no doubt about that. What about Hubbard's relationship with some notorious characters in history, Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons?
Yeah, so Hubbard went through an occult period, no question, in the 40s, and he was a fan of Aleister Crowley, the famous occultist in England. He actually corresponded with him, never met him, but he did correspond with Crowley and called him my good friend in at least one lecture. And there's absolutely no question that Scientology is based on some of Crowley's ideas, and you can actually see it in the structure of Scientology. There's an Ohio State professor named Hugh Urban that a really interesting study showing the parallels between Scientology and Crowley's ideas. And Crowley also had this idea that you were trying to regain these magical abilities that you were unaware of. Very similar ideas. In Los Angeles, the person who, one of the most important figures in this kind of Crowley occultism, was an early rocket scientist named Jack Parsons. And Hubbard was introduced to him right after the war ended. Hubbard had kind of a mediocre World War II experience, and he ended up in L.A. kind of directionless. He was married to a woman up in Washington State, but instead of going home to her, he was hanging out in L.A. and met Parsons, stole Parsons' girlfriend away from him, moved in. Parsons was this fascinating figure. He was not only a rocket scientist and helped build JPL's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, but he also was in the 40s, and I have a copy of this. In the 40s, he had this large house, and he liked to rent out the rooms to eccentric people. And in his advertisement for roommates, he made it a requirement you had to be an atheist. Imagine that in the 40s in Los Angeles, putting an ad in the paper saying that. That's how kind of odd this guy was, ahead of his time, whatever. And Hubbard got into that house and spent about a year with Parsons, and they got up to some very strange occult things. Parsons decided that, building on Crowley's ideas, he wanted to create the Moon Child, which would be the Antichrist. And so he was looking for a woman that he could impregnate using a particular sex magic ritual, and Hubbard was there taking notes or something. Who does a good job describing all this is Lawrence Wright in his book Going Clear. And so, yeah, no question, Hubbard was influenced by all this. All this, it would later lead to a lot of his ideas that came out in Dianetics and then Scientology. But Church of Scientology completely denies that any of this had an influence on they hate the fact that Hubbard spent this year and a half involved in this occult group, and they try to hide that as much as possible.
Yeah, but if anybody thinks that Tony Ortega has got a wild imagination, you can look all this stuff up. Okay, the story sounds crazy, but the Moonchild story, man, that's out there. And I think Hubbard's son tells that story.
Yeah, Hubbard's son Nibs tells that story. I've written a couple stories about that. John Atack, good historian of the church, he and I did a story together where we talked about Nibs and these bizarre things that he said about his dad. What's interesting is CBS actually put together a series about Jack Parsons. And so a lot of us and it was based on a book that does talk about Parsons and Hubbard. And so it wasn't a great series, but it was interesting to me because I was waiting for the period with Hubbard to appear. And wouldn't you know it, I think they did two seasons, and the very last episode, Hubbard knocks on Parsons' door, and that season ended, and then they canceled it before the third season. So the whole part with Hubbard and Parsons together didn't get put into that series.
Yeah, that's the most fascinating part of the story, and it's not like people aren't interested in this stuff either, because there's interest for it. You got to wonder why it's covered up, Or you think that might have been something with the Scientology, the power of the back room, strong arming.
Well, I can tell you that studios, even though Going Clear has come out, even though as a HBO documentary, and I was very lucky to be a part of that. And Leah Remini had 3 seasons of her show on A&E, and major books from Lawrence Wright and Janet Reitman have come out in major publishers. Even with all that, I can tell you, the studios are still terrified of Scientology. Yeah. Their lawyers are terrified because they know Scientology's reputation for scorched earth tactics in court. Even though Scientology hasn't sued, a newspaper or a magazine since 1995. But their reputation is so scary that it keeps people from taking them on sometimes.
Also, too, when you have these large-scale investigations and these large teams of investigators, there's a lot of blackmail dirt that comes up, that you don't have to go to court anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that too as well, which we're going to be talking about in the second half. But real quick, before we do, why don't you tell us about your other book that you wrote, your Battlefield Scientology?
Yeah, so I wrote this book about Paulette Cooper and what she went through as the unbreakable Miss Lovely, and then she and I together did a book where we took some of the best stories from my website, repackaged it, put together some essays by her, of her first writing about Scientology in many, many years, and we called it Battlefield Scientology. And it's a collection of different stories that we've covered about everything from the celebrities to the history to the spying, and it's a fun collection. Battlefield Scientology. That's also, both books are at Amazon.
And there's so much stuff coming out. You can probably do another book in the next year. Constantly new informational stuff. Just tell me about some lawsuits going on right now, some court cases.
Yeah, so there's various criminal prosecutions and lawsuits going on now that we're keeping an eye on. Like I said, Danny Masterson is facing 45 years to life in prison for allegedly raping 3 women who were all Scientologists. He and the Church of Scientology are also being sued by those women in a separate lawsuit that has had all kinds of problems, and that's something we're watching. There's a chiropractor in New York who is a major Scientologist who is facing years in prison for Medicare fraud. There is now a New York money manager named David Gentili, who was recently arrested, who's a Scientologist, a longtime Scientologist, and he's been arrested for running a $1.8 billion Ponzi scheme. So there are various cases, individual cases of Scientologists being prosecuted and lawsuits going on, and we keep an eye on them all at the Underground Bunker, my website, TonyOrtega.org, and in fact, on each story, I have a little running list of each case and where it is and when the next hearing is, that kind of thing. I think a lot of people come to my site because they want to see what's going on with all those cases.
Yeah, and just imagine, you got all those cases, and this is with the secrecy. This is with the huge legal team. This is with the team of private investigators keeping people's noses out, and the opposition going against. Just imagine if they didn't have all that, how many cases there would be.
Well, there are these individual Scientologists facing court, Danny Masterson and Jay Spina, the chiropractor, and David Gentili. But there's, where's the investigation of Scientology itself? That's what a lot of us have been wondering, because I know the feds are interested, and the feds do look into this. And of course, what we'd really like to see is for them to reopen an examination of their tax-exempt status, and also to look at things like obstruction of justice. And we're always hearing hints that the federal government's interested, but they just never seem to pull the trigger. And the closest they came was in 2009, 12 years ago now. They were very close to raiding the major base in California, and then pulled back at the last second.
Just imagine if they did. There's probably people still in there working as slave labor. They could be rescued and freed.
Absolutely, no question they're there, yeah.
Good time to take a commercial break. We are with Tony Ortega. You can go to TonyOrtega.org, or you can follow him too on Twitter at TonyOrtega94. He's the author of these 2 books about Scientology. One is called The Unbreakable Miss Lovely, How the Church of Scientology Tried to Destroy Paulette Cooper. And the other one is Battlefield Scientology, Exposing L. Ron Hubbard's Dangerous Religion. We'll be right back with more of Tony Ortega after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119. Thank you so much for listening to the Opperman Report. I want to welcome all our new listeners at WWPR 1490 AM in the Tampa Bay area. We're brand new down here. We're getting a nice warm welcome. We have great advertising opportunities for local sponsors, local businesses, but also international websites and international companies too on our other stations in California, Nevada, Utah, and on the internet worldwide. But down here in Tampa Bay, Florida, we have some great opportunities for you to come in and get very, very affordable advertising rates. Get a hold of me at oppermanreport@gmail.com and we'll cut you a good deal.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
Silk City Hot Sauce. A small batch hot sauce prepared with farm-grown peppers. Rich and vibrant taste, no artificial ingredients, 100% pure goodness. 8 flavors from mild to wild. The sweet and spicy Mango Madness, the green jalapeno sauce called Aztec Attack. The Dragon features fire-roasted peppers and pure Vermont maple syrup. Killer hot sauces for the true hot sauce fanatic, a blend of ghost peppers, habanero peppers, honey, and garlic, and more. You gotta see the bottles too. Each flavor has original comic book artwork. You gotta see them. Go to silkcityhotsauce.com. silkcityhotsauce.com. Enter promo code ED, ED, to save 15%, and you'll also receive a free bottle of hot sauce.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. We have today with us Tony Ortega. He's the author of a couple of books on Scientology, The Unbreakable Miss Lovely, How the Church of Scientology Tried to Destroy Paulette Cooper, and Battlefield Scientology, Exposing L. Ron Hubbard's Dangerous Religion. You could find him at TonyOrtega.org, or you could follow him on Twitter at TonyOrtega94. Now, Mr. Ortega, just recently you put out some articles about how they're still at it. And for some reason, they have their old-time PI squad going after the group Anonymous.
Yeah, Scientology has its own sort of spy wing, secret police, which is called the Office of Special Affairs. And they're still continuing to do the same kind of surveillance and dirty tricks today that they were doing against Paulette Cooper 40 years ago. And we knew that they had done some spying on the Anonymous movement. If you know about the Anonymous movement, it kind of came out of nowhere in 2008 when a video of Tom Cruise was leaked to the internet and Scientology tried to suppress it. And Anonymous, which was aware of Scientology's sort of censoring of the internet, decided to take them on as an enemy. And in 2008, there were these protests all around the world of mostly young people who were taking part in the whole anonymous thing online. And the idea was, with thousands of people writing about Scientology online and showing up to picket and wearing masks, Scientology wouldn't be able to retaliate because there were just too many of them and they were anonymous. Well, Scientology did retaliate. We've heard stories about how they would they hired private investigators to follow these protesters home and then try to intimidate them and various things. But just recently, I became aware of the identity of one of their most notorious black bag department guys by the name of Russ Andrews, and I actually got photographs of him, and I decided to make those public. And I've been talking to people who worked with him, and he is one of these people that follows people around, digs up records on them that Scientology considers enemies. And then I heard from somebody that had actually worked with him on some spying operations against Anonymous, and it turns out it was in Seattle in 2009. And I actually obtained written documents that Russ Andrews had put together. He just basically, his job was to sit outside this guy's apartment what this kid had done. He was only 19 years old. He had dared to hold a sign outside of a Scientology church. I mean, that was his crime, right? He was trying to raise awareness about Scientology's controversies. And for that, Scientology sent this goon to sit outside his house all day, days and days, and write up notes about it. And I even got video that he shot following this kid and his friends around. So it was really a unique, even though it's been 12 years, and I'm sure some people will say, who cares what Scientology was doing against Anonymous in 2009? For those of us that watch Scientology, it's really interesting to get this raw work product from that their private investigators put together to show exactly how they operate, and that they're still operating now. They were the way they were in 1970, when they became famous for breaking into government offices. Because as I said earlier, they're following a playbook laid down by L. Ron Hubbard in the 60s, and they just don't know any other way except to use these PIs to follow people, harass them, and play dirty tricks on them.
Okay, just to get this straight, Tony Ortega got a copy of this PI's raw notes?
Yeah.
How'd you do that, bro?
And video.
How'd you do that? I love you, man. How'd you do that? Everybody be nice to Tony Ortega. Watch out. Okay.
Clean living and hard work. What can I say?
It's okay. Great, man.
I've been at this for 25 years now.
Now, this investigator you talk about, does he work exclusively for Scientology, or he has outside cases too?
He is a Scientologist himself. His wife runs one of Scientology's most prominent front groups called the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, which is their wing that attacks psychiatry. And but Russ does have his own investigations firm called Tri-West Investigative Services in Los Angeles. So I think he does take outside clients, but I think his premier client is the Church of Scientology itself.
Gotcha. Now, do they have a team of in-house guys too?
Yes, and in fact, they also use volunteers, and that was in this follow-up story. I actually talked to somebody who was a public Scientologist in Seattle who was recruited to infiltrate Anonymous and be part of the picket so they could take pictures of people, right. And who actually sat with Russ Andrews on one of his stakeouts. So they use church members to do this work as well.
As actual infiltrators.
Infiltrators, surveillance work, online harassment. But they do a lot of contracting as well as with outside professionals.
You mentioned online harassment. Like, do you mean they have like a team of trolls that'll go and attack people?
Yes, and they run smear websites, sometimes that identify themselves as Church of Scientology, sometimes that don't. that go after people. I mean, Leah Remini, Mike Rinder, Ron Miscavige, who's David Miscavige's father. They are constantly being smeared online in many different platforms by just teams of Scientologists that do nothing but, throw these baseless accusations at them. It's really disgusting.
Do you know how you hear these stories and you hear them all the time, about these escort services and how they're allowed to operate because they give intelligence to local vice squads and local intelligence police forces and stuff like that, and even sometimes the FBI and the CIA. Do you think it's possible that the Church of Scientology, with the amount of information that they gather from people's personal lives, could have that kind of relationship with intelligence operatives?
That's been brought up again and again, and I think there has at least been some evidence of that. I think in general the government keeps away from Scientology. They're actually adversaries, and they were prosecuted in the late 70s and early 80s. I think anybody. Just a story just came up the other day. I was talking to somebody from way back in 1990 in Finland. It turned out that the president's top security guards were getting involved in Scientology, and he had to fire them. And you have to, because the security. If you're a Scientologist, you have to open yourself up to interrogations. They're auditing, it's called, and you have to open up every aspect of your life under what this interrogation machine. They believe it's a mind reading machine. It's not, but as long as they believe it, they're going to spill their guts. And so any Scientologist is a security risk because they're going to tell Scientology everything they know. So yeah, those security guards were fired right away. So there definitely is a real risk in having a Scientologist in your organization.
Well, then that sparked my memory there, because what about that story, I guess it was back in the late 70s or the 80s, of that group of NSA agents that were doing remote viewing, and they turned out they had a Ouija board and they were involved in Scientology?
Yeah, this is,
Wow,
there's
story.
no question that the CIA had this interest for a while in some utter nonsense about remote viewing and mind reading, and it was partly because they had gotten involved with a couple of upper level Scientologists. And I gotta tell you, Ed, it's just all nonsense, and it's a shame that our government got involved in that for a while, but I don't think they are today.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully, yeah. Hopefully they're not. Now, what about Ted Gunderson once said that the former LA FBI.
Oh, I know Ted.
Okay. Oh, really? What was your relationship like with Ted?
No, I don't mean I knew him personally. Yeah. I mean, I knew all about him because I not only I had actually done some other stories, and this poor guy near the end of his life. I mean, you look at the stuff that QAnon is doing today that's just crazy, impossible theories, and that's the kind of stuff he was pushing in the 70s and 80s. I mean, this guy, I got really into a story once about, he was claiming this woman was being targeted by the CIA with mind weapons and stuff. I mean, it was kind of a shame. I think that the fact that he had been the LA office guy for the FBI was supposed to give him some credibility, but he really had none.
Well, you got to think, when he was, I keep forgetting the name of that office, but he was in charge of the FBI director, in California,
in
Los Angeles.
All right.
A huge position, and that was during the time of COINTELPRO. So this guy was COINTELPRO. There's not like, maybe he was. This is what he was doing. And I had a client that told me way back, like right before he died, that she met him at FBI headquarters in Los Angeles, working at the FBI, right months before he died. So
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I just remember him trying to convince people that thousands of, you hear what QAnon is saying today. In the 80s, he was trying to convince people that thousands and thousands of American children were going missing, and because they were being eaten in satanic rituals.
What was his opposition, though, to Scientology? What was his beef with them? Back and forth.
I don't remember, because he was so susceptible to all the crazy conspiracies. I don't remember what his involvement was with that, but he definitely was a whistleblower about Scientology during the 70s. But later he just got into such crazy stuff.
Yeah, I know. Very, very strange life of Ted Gunderson. We can get into that for hours. Okay. Now, what other use of undercover agents and harassment techniques? Arnaldo Lemur, has been on my show a few times. He wound up in a bizarre suicide, attempted murder suicide. Do you believe he was driven to suicide by them as well?
Well, I think he would say that he was. I mean, he had a lot of personal demons, and I had to cut off contact with him because he was just saying some really racist stuff to me, and just he saw, UFOs and black helicopters everywhere, and it was, it was sad because at one point he had been one of the most active, most productive exposers of Scientology's secrets, but. No, I just think he was a guy with personal problems, and it's just a shame he tried to shoot his own wife in the face.
And she forgave him, yeah. And I hear you. I had to block him off too. But what comes first, the chicken or the egg, man? Was he losing his mind at first, or did they drive him to that? You come across a damaged client. You say, they're a damaged client, but still they're damaged because this is what happened to them.
I mean, I'm sure he would say that Scientology was somewhat at fault, but I just saw a guy with just really bad personal problems.
Yeah, and that was from the start when he entered into Scientology, you think?
No. I think it was something that came on over time. I know he had physical problems, he had pain problems. Yeah. I think there was some medication issues involved. And he shot a woman in the face. So I'm just not. It's hard to be sympathetic. I'm sorry.
Well, she forgave him. You got to wonder what was going on there as well. And that whole opioid addiction with these prescription pain pills is the epidemic in this country. It's not talked about now because we've got a real epidemic, but still, it's still out there. What's going on with the leadership of Scientology right now with Miscavige? Is he still in power?
Yeah, David Miscavige is number one. He's been number one since 1987. Hubbard died in 86, and then Miscavige basically pushed other people out of the way and took control. He's in total control. He's been in control. Now, there's been a mass exodus from Scientology, and they've probably only got about 20,000 active members now that are left in that thing. But he doesn't need members. He's in control of the trademarks and copyrights. He's got a group of wealthy donors that just keep giving him millions and millions of dollars. So it's still very much Dave's show, and he's just a real ruthless taskmaster who makes people give him money and rip apart their families, and the government just doesn't seem to want to do anything about it.
And I know at one period of time his wife was missing. No one knew where she was. Had seen her.
No, she's been gone for 15 years now.
So, but she's still alive on the records, right? There's no death certificate.
I think she's still alive because, I know where they're keeping her, and I've been reporting on that for 9 years now. Scientology has various sort of secretive locations, but the most secret subsidiary they have is this thing called the Church of Spiritual Technology, CST, and that's the little organization that operates these vaults where they store Hubbard's words to last thousands of years in case of civilization collapse. And they've got 4 of these vaults, 3 in California, 1 in New Mexico. They tried to build one in Wyoming but gave up. And the headquarters for that little group is at a vault in the San Bernardino Mountains, about an hour and a half or 2 hours northeast of Los Angeles. And that's when they stuck her there in the late summer of 2005. They let her out just long enough in the summer of 2007 to go to her dad's funeral. But other than that, she's been put away there for the last 15 years. And what they say publicly is that she's working on a special project. But she doesn't even get to come out to see her family. She's just a prisoner. And, I think John Brousseau, who was David Miscavige's brother-in-law and knows Miscavige and Shelley and Tom Cruise as well as anybody, has said that, and on Leah Remini's show, he said that Dave will keep her where she is until she dies. The question I always get is, hasn't he killed her? And I say, no, Miscavige doesn't kill people. He destroys their lives. And he has banished his wife to a small mountain compound. The reason why I say she's still alive is that twice in the last couple of years, Scientology's attorneys have when they've been asked by the press, have said that they have personally visited with her and she is fine and does not want to make a public statement. Well, look, an attorney is not going to risk his law license pretending that a dead woman is alive. Okay? Shelley is alive. She's working at that little compound. There's reason I think why she's not in good shape. There was a sighting in 2016 that I take seriously by a person that lived there locally. I think they let Shelley out long enough to do a little shopping, and she was spotted, and she didn't look too good. She just turned 60, but I think she's there, and I don't think she's going anywhere. And the crazy thing, Ed, is that if law enforcement did go up to that little compound, there's only like 12 or 15 people there, throw open the doors and say, Shelley, you can leave, she might not take it. She may be resigned to her fate, that she's been assigned to that job and she can never leave. It's one of the crazy things about Scientology. As Lawrence Wright has said, the bars are in your head.
This is so terrifying. This story and then the one about the not believing your children are really your own children, and that disconnect between family is just heartbreaking. We only got a few minutes left, Tony. What do you want to leave us with?
Leah Remini's been doing a fantastic job. First on her television show, now she's got a podcast. I would encourage people to look that up. You can listen to it for free through the internet. She and Mike Rinder are doing a fantastic job on that podcast. Please come to the Underground Bunker, my website, TonyOrtega.org. Every morning at 7 a.m. we have a new story. We're covering these court cases. We're covering various other things going on with Scientology. And, but Leah and I both want to do is get enough momentum with the public that the government does something. We did think there was a possibility that President Trump might do something, but ultimately he never got around to it. The last time Scientology was investigated, it was under President Obama. So perhaps with President Biden, there might be an opportunity for the FBI to do something. I don't know. I just know that the government won't do anything unless it hears from the public that they are concerned about this organization harming people, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, it really is a shame that independent investigative reporters and ex-members have to kind of spearhead this movement on their own, and that there's no protection. Well, especially when you hear these stories about kids in danger, been put in risk, slave labor, this poor woman missing for 15 years. I tell you, Tony, but thank you for coming on.
It's amazing that it's happening now in 21st century America. It's incredible.
Right, because right now nobody, there's no one who doesn't know that Scientology is shady.
Right.
You don't even need to be afraid to say that anymore because you would have been sued 20 years ago, but now you don't have to. But once again, Tony Ortega. Please, people, check out our archive show on Spreaker with Tony Ortega. We get into even more detail than tonight. We did 2 hours. It was about 10 years ago. The books are The Unbreakable Miss Lovely, How the Church of Scientology Tried to Destroy Paulette Cooper. And the other one is Battlefield Scientology, which is probably the Battlefield Earth, that crazy movie they made, exposing L. Ron Hubbard's dangerous alert. I don't think anybody sat through that movie. But you can also find him at TonyOrtega.org and his Twitter. He's always got good stuff on Twitter, too. Tony Ortega, 94. Mr. Ortega, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ed.
Good night, bro.
Good night.
And now a word from our sponsors, emailrevealer.com. People ask me all the time, hey, Ed, are you still a private investigator? I sure am. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, where you give us your spouse's email address. We trace it back to online dating websites, catch them cheating online. Email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat. Locate his hidden assets. Locate his hidden bank accounts. Find his current place of employment and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com, digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages, create a report that you can use in court. Emailrevealer.com, 800-572-9762. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. An AquaDam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an AquaDam can do the job. An AquaDam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An AquaDam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An AquaDam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give AquaDam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119. Silk City Hot Sauce. A small batch hot sauce prepared with farm-grown peppers. Rich and vibrant taste, no artificial ingredients, 100% pure goodness. 8 flavors from mild to wild. The sweet and spicy Mango Madness, the green jalapeno sauce called Aztec Attack. The Dragon features fire-roasted peppers and pure Vermont maple syrup. Killer hot sauces for the true hot sauce fanatic, a blend of ghost peppers, habanero peppers, honey, and garlic, and more. You gotta see the bottles too. Each flavor has original comic book artwork. You gotta see them. Go to SilkCityHotSauce.com. SilkCityHotSauce.com. Enter promo code ED, ED, to save 15%, and you'll also receive a free bottle of hot sauce. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. OppermanReport.com. Hey, do you like what you're hearing? Do you like the work that you see us doing here at Opperman Report? You can support that work by becoming a member at OppermanReport.com. And as you have access to over 200 exclusive shows and interviews that you can't find on YouTube or Spreaker or iHeart or iTunes or KYAH. You can't find them anywhere else online, exclusive to our member sections, to our members. Also, too, there's images, videos, documents, court docs. And don't forget, you can hear your ad played here on the Opperman Report, reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis because the show is repeated every day all over the world. Contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com and I'll give you a good deal on advertising rates.